Welcome to Real Human Design Stories, where guests share their powerful personal stories of transformation through human design. I'm Kathy Bochonko, an intuitive human design mentor and guide to radical self-trust. Join us as we explore how your human design experiment can truly change your life. Hi there. I have a first today. I have two incredible guests, both of which have recently shared their personal stories. So I'll be sure to link those episodes in the comments. But I want to talk about how I met them at a conference, and I was able to witness the way Brandy and Richard had this incredible connection, and the way they related to each other, I saw it firsthand. It was amazing to witness this beautiful respect, love, just the whole way the vibe went. And I knew right then and there I wanted to have them on the podcast, both individually and then together, like we're doing right now. So let me introduce you to first. Brandy Jordan is a 6'2" Splenic Manifester. She's a left angle cross of incarnation. She's a therapist, a wisdom keeper, a human design teacher, and an embodiment guide. And I talked to her a couple of episodes back, and it was really a powerful episode. Richard Corbett is a 6'2" also, but he's an emotional manifesting generator, left angle cross of healing. Richard is a tenured teacher at Human Design America with over 25 years in the human design experiment. And Brandy and Richard have committed to bringing their love, their experiment, and their personal growth to its zenith. As six lines and beloveds, they are committed to the path of individuated relating. This path includes alchemizing the frictional harmony that all couples experience by using it as fuel for our personal evolution and further individuation within a loving embrace. Richard and Brandy together have over 25 years experience experimenting and teaching human design, and they've co-authored the book, The Art of Conscious Relating, Transforming Your Relationships Through Human Design. And I'm so happy to have you back together. Hi, guys.
Kathy, thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be back with you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excited to be talking about this thing that is the whole of our life.
Yeah?
Yeah. Learning to relate in all dimensions of life is quite an adventure. And and we're excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I was able to see that in person, and you guys did a few different talks at the Human Design Conference in Colorado and then also in Santa Fe. And so getting to see you in all those different environments, different settings was really powerful. But I really remember in one of the talks in Colorado, you were talking about, and I just remember the way I felt. I don't remember what you said. So I'm going to just try to convey it. You talked about how you tried to see each other in your wounding, right? Like, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but there was this vulnerability in the way that you talked about your relationship that I'd never really experienced someone sharing like that. And it was so incredibly powerful. And I don't know if you have any idea what I'm talking about, because I feel like I'm not really conveying it. But this whole way that you guys are able to respond to each other rather than react. And I know you're not, respond is not your strategy, but we all respond, right? That's part of being human. So, but yeah, the way you can elaborate, if you can talk a little bit to what I just said, if it made any sense.
I think that what you were talking about was, or one of the parts that you were seeing maybe was when we were talking about how when we come together in romantic partnership, generally the first little while is working out the psyches of each other's unmet childhood needs.
Yes.
So to be able to see in the other, to see that by making this request or having this core response, because it would be a response to something Richard has or has not done, I can then turn that mirror back and see how I am hoping he is meeting an unmet need from my childhood, and how I now can take that responsibility in my, to myself and meet my need, and then share with Richard how that could be a more expansive way of loving me, is to add this to the repertoire, but only after I've found my own solution and not necessarily relied on him to hold the space for or meet the need of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting concept that it's the people that we fall in love with have the power and the potential to trigger our greatest personal wounds.
Yes.
So it's a delicate dance, nurturing and supporting loving relationships while also holding space for each other to grow and heal from the past, family of origin, childhood wounding, things that all of us have some degree of. It's in the relationship that this will manifest itself in its strongest, most painful form.
That's right. And that's the way it's supposed to be. This is why we get the binary of orgasmic experience along with the other side of that in one relating, in one coming together. It's a beautiful explosion of a new cosmos, as above, so below and within. And this relating that two cosmic bodies can come together and find their way is quite a beautiful dance.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna end with that point that this is the, if we talk about the movement forward into our emotional security and regulation, and there's a lot of speak about non-binary and polyamory and all these different ways of relating with each other. The overall message here is that our way of relating is changing, and so we are as following our designs, our body's authority, not our minds making up this, but have found ourselves on the edge of learning how to do it. And so every single moment, right before we came on, we asked for 3 minutes because we were having another coming together where we are dedicated to owning our needs and our ability to meet them, and then make a loving request from our beloved from that place of sovereignty. And that's the new way of relating moving forward.
Yeah. I remember when we first met, and we actually met at one of the Santa Fe Human Design Conferences a few years
Good
ago.
plug for the Human Design Conference, right?
Right.
In September.
And there was certainly an immediate attraction and talking and visiting, getting to know each other like any new couple. And I remember we were just having a wonderful conversation about human design and relationships, because one of the fundamental tenets of the human design is that you get to follow your energy, your integrity, your sovereignty at all times, right? Well, how can one do that and still exist in a committed, dedicated, however we want to word relationship, romantic relationship? How does that really work?
Yeah.
Because relationships often mean compromise, meeting in the middle. Well, how can you follow your energy and feel compromised and have all that work out? So this was from the front, and also us knowing from our backgrounds, this concept we already shared, that when you are in love, this is when you get triggered. There's always the binary. It always makes me think of Gate 37, line 5. It's called the line of love. Well, the opposite side of that is hate, right? It's the same core, different end of the spectrum. So yes, this from the beginning of our encounter together, part of this exploration and evolving out loud has been us learning how to live in following our personal energy and honoring that, yet also being in lockstep communication and romantic relationship with the other. And sometimes it can feel like quite a tightrope.
Absolutely.
Right? Well, 37.5 is my Chiron. It's just kind of funny.
Chiron. We do.
That's my Chiron, though, 37.5. So this is, and I think, isn't it today that Chiron is squaring Mars or something like that? Or was that yesterday? There's something going on with Chiron and Mars today, I remember seeing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's, I can feel that. Today is actually the 32nd anniversary of my first date with my husband.
Oh my God.
I wrote it down somewhere in the way. And so it pops up all the time. And I'm like, oh, I told him today, I said, that was a really expensive date, wasn't it? So, yeah.
Beautiful.
That's lovely.
A beautiful contemplation, your 32nd year, your 32nd anniversary.
Well, yeah, for dating. We've been married 29 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It is.
And it's interesting because I'm often as also a 6'2", but I am married to someone who is very logical. Not that we can't be logical and follow human design, but he's always like, my mind's fine. I don't need to, I'm good with my mind. This doesn't make sense to me, whatever. So I'm doing this on one side, right? But it's amazing as I've really started to do the work, how it impacts almost. I mean, he still has his own stuff and that's it, but I've been able to give it to him and not take it on, right?
Oh my goodness. What a beautiful thing to say, because I think that is one of the initial paradigm shifts that gets to happen, is to understand we can go into the science about it and I can prove it to you, but also to understand that you can be the strongest metronome in the room, that it only takes one of you to affect the realities of all of you.
That's a great analogy, the metronome in the room. Yeah, because they'll all sync, right? If someone doesn't know the musical thing, right? Yeah.
That's right. Everything will sync and whatever cannot will leave in a vibratory way. So not in an ugly way, but in a methodical, it doesn't vibrate. It doesn't resonate there anymore. That's all. It's just nature's way of moving it out of the way. So it's just such a beautiful tenet of understanding to start with, is that you don't have to take it on. And another thing that I say is mirroring the magnificence of the other. If and when we can remember, because sometimes both of the people in the relationship are dysregulated. But if the other one can remember holding the magnificence, the mirror of the other's magnificence, even though it's not being shown, knowing the benefit of the doubt, giving the knowing that there is a wisdom, there's a transformation, there is an innocence in the sharing, even if it doesn't feel like it is of help to either one of us. Being able to mirror the magnificence, even when it's not seen in the other, is what I hear you saying. Yeah.
It's been a lot of, I really have realized how much of my, I don't know, for lack of a better term, my life's curriculum has been about finding myself and being in relationship and not allowing one to, not having to choose, right? Like being able to say, I'm not going to run away and be alone, right? Because you don't like what I'm doing. But I'm also not going to stop what I'm doing if it's part of what my heart says I have to do, right? Mm-hmm. So, but also not expecting you to like it and go along with it in that whole, and it's a lot.
Yeah, and it's a process, right? I mean, we hear a lot in the human design language and community about being alone, deconditioning, taking space to really get to know ourselves in this new light from what we've discovered through our body graph. And that's a process. And it can take some real inner exploration to find ourselves again, right? But then that's one part of the phase. And then the next phase is taking that integrated, self-authenticated, natural, honest self into a relationship. And that's a whole nother ballgame. It's easy to live human design, follow strategy and authority when it's just you by yourself, and going out into the world as we do. But bringing that into a relationship with another person doing the same experiment, following their authority and their strategy, take some more tools. I think that's what we like to work with in our classes and what we're working on. Mm-hmm.
And finding compassion for ourselves and for the other in all of the moments, understanding that we are doing relationships differently than have been done before. And so we get to have grace and patience for our own immaturity and our own inability to stay regulated, our own inability to hold the other's dysregulation, and to continue to forgive instead of. So I'm going to human design speak for a minute, but the emotional solar plexus is mutating from a motor to an awareness center. And so as a motor, which it has been for years and years and years, we make decisions. We move things. Energy gets moved based on the hope or the pain that is being felt in that individual at the time. We are in the beginning of this mutation, this changing from having our emotions move us to say, no, you're not for me, to falling back into trust and love with our actual authority and letting our emotions bring awareness and information to our authority. So allowing the moments where my programming, my conditioning says, oh, he didn't automatically know what I needed without me telling him. That means he doesn't love me. And so therefore I must leave. All of these stories, and allowing that to exist full-fledged in my body, and allowing it to exist. He should know. I have told him, all of these righteous things. I'm allowed to feel that way. And when I'm allowed to feel that way, and that doesn't mean that it's over, we can find a deeper trust in each other and hold each other in those moments instead of defending ourselves and building up our fortress around ourselves against each other in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now when you guys first met, I think you mentioned, Brandy, that there was like a pulling away, right?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yes, we could totally talk about it. So I'll tell it from my perspective, and then he'll tell it from his perspective, if you feel to.
Okay.
From my perspective, I had been at the tail end of about a 7-year stretch of honoring my body, getting to know myself, not really engaging in any relationship, physical, spirit, any kind of anything. Just really getting to know the energy of my body, to the point where I could feel I have open motors. And so all of these open motors are how I connect with the world around me. So it almost felt like I was this kind of amoeba outside of a relationship with something. It was kind of cool to feel. But I met Richard, and I'll just tell the story of the moment because it was really cute. We all went to 10,000 Waves after one of the days of events of the Human Design Conference in Santa Fe. And, they're fun little places. And I was a single girl. And I was, had my eyes on a few people who were my people, that kind of thing. And then I sat down next to him in the spa and we looked up together and I saw Mars conjunct the moon. And I looked back down at him and I must have been close enough in his field to where those 6 electromagnetics lit up the sky. Yeah. And I said, he's it.
Right?
The one. And so, as a manifester, I have knowing before most people have knowing. And so I was like, oh, I'll pick you. And I said, and we connected and it was beautiful.
You gave him something to respond to, I bet.
I did. And then it was just, manifestor vision so quickly. And I think that we were just so used to being single. So from my perspective, what it felt like was I was too much too soon. And so there was a coming apart and then kind of a very easeful coming back together at months later, almost, months later. So you go ahead.
Yeah, well, for me being a defined solar plexus, I definitely needed more time. Yeah. There was definitely an electromagnetic spark and connection. I too had been single for a number of years and very happy, really not worried about whether a relationship comes or not. I really have a beautiful life that was happening on my own with my friends and so forth. So I was quite hesitant, just understanding that this idea that I presented at the beginning, which is, there's a lot of compromise and there's such a tendency in relationships to fall back into these patterns that are unhealthy, the codependency, where we're both marginalizing our truth and integrity in effort to please the other person. And it's very natural. This is tribal energy. This is where we've come from. This is why this is on tap right now, because we're facing the 2027 mutation and we're feeling the change, that old patterns of relationship structures are no longer working for the future of where we're going. And so I really felt like we are in that mix right now. Yes. And so I was hesitant for sure. But with time and following my wave, and synchronicity. And we came back together like a couple of magnets and have been going strong ever since that happened.
Yeah. So there was, that's the thing. There's a lot of people who say, in the future, do we really need committed relationships? It's not the same as before when, a woman wasn't safe without a man. And there was this whole, the whole way that the world was structured and stuff. But, and do we need, I don't want to tell anybody what they need, right? I mean, some people might say they don't want a relationship forever, but what for you guys, what was the pull to relationship? Was it just, it was so strong between the two of you, or was there something that you knew you would not be gaining if you were not having this?
That's a good question. And looking back on it, I mean, my decision or my body's movement to engage with his response system was definitely of, it just came out. I'm a splenic ego manifester, and it just kind of came out of my mouth. And all of my channels to the throat are unconscious. It came, and it just kept coming out of my mouth. And I'm like, no, I want to respect your energy. I want you to know that you are free to move about the cabin. And I want to support this vision. And I knew that I had gotten to the end of this celibacy from everything, from going out, from being with people, from alcohol, from lots of different foods, from anything. It was just a pure abstinence in life, living in the deserts near Death Valley. And I felt that I got to this point in knowing myself where I knew that I was only myself through the eyes of another. I could be myself all day long for myself, but we are here to exist. And the root of that word is to stand out, to be seen. And I started feeling the difference in my own quiet, floating amoeba, no motors energy, and coming into the world and being with my open solar plexus, my open sacral, my open root, being with the juice of life in that way, then brought me out. Like all of my design, my expression, it is only who it is in relation to another. It's all projected. And so I knew that I wanted to take this to another level. I wanted to be able to be solid in myself, in mirroring and in love. I knew that I could see what love saw in everyone. I got to this point in my awakening where I could see what love saw. I could see it in an instant, like a little game. Oh gosh, this is what love is doing here. This is what love is doing there. But every time I got into a love relationship, I couldn't always see that. So I am this ego manifester here to prove something. And I saw something that I could come in and do something about for the sake of us all.
Yeah, I like what you said about see what love saw. And I was watching something on Instagram or something, and the person said, was talking about how we don't fall in love or something. And then I don't remember all of it, but the thing I saved was love finds you when you found yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that really speaks. I feel like that speaks to what you're saying. And if anybody has not listened to both your episodes, the stuff that you're talking about, Brandy, when you talked about it in your episode, you talked about burying yourself in the earth in a hole, basically, to ground yourself with Mother Earth. There's a lot of stuff in there that was really going on with you. You were going through a lot, healing yourself from lupus and all of this. So it was not just that you felt like, well, let me try something. You were in a rock bottom. Yeah. And I really feel like your story really resonated with a lot of people. I had a lot of comments that it was really powerful for them. And so to come out of that, I think that's very hopeful for people to think that after you go through all of that from this rock bottom experience that you were in, and then spending all this time really finding yourself, and then to come out and wind up in such a beautiful, beloved partnership, that I think that's something that gives people a lot of hope, right? And I know that you guys talk about in some of the blurbs for your book, and I'll be honest, I have not read your book yet, but I know you talk about 9-centered relationships. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to what you mean by that.
I can or you can? Okay. It really points to, it's maybe more of a symbology of the evolution of our consciousness, and that we are moving from this 7-centered way of being into a 9-centered way of being. And if we look at what 2 9 centers are here being created or being worked through, it's the ego and the solar plexus. And so this 9-centered relating is proving is these 2 motors that I feel like we are becoming aware of their strengths and their vulnerabilities. We are becoming aware of how to use them, and that is through relating. That is it is a completely different way. As you said earlier, women don't necessarily need to marry in order to have, a life and a home and things like that. That the requirements of a 7-centered being are no longer the requirements of a 9-centered being. A 9-centered being's requirements are to stay alive and become aware of how their emotions are affecting their body right now. How epigenetically they're becoming aware of their emotional states, whether they're defined or undefined, but becoming aware of the wave of emotions that exists here in the plane and being able to regulate ourselves throughout it. That's 9-centered relating. Mm-hmm. It's becoming conscious of myself and how I think he should be more like me.
But it is true to be conscious of the fact that you do think that. Right?
Yeah,
that might be what your mind is telling you, right? You said it and you laugh, be like it's something, but we think, and that's probably the biggest downfall in relationships, right? We fall in love with somebody who's different, right? We fall in love with the genetic diversity and all.
The greatest opportunity.
And then we try so hard to make them more like us.
Isn't that funny?
Have you heard the phrase opposites attract and then they attack?
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's how the electromagnetics work, right?
Right. And it's the quantum field of evolution creating new experiences over and over and over again. And it's a really cool, I don't know, I think that I like to shift perspectives. So it is the opportunity. We think of it as a downfall when we think that relationships are here to make us happy. We can think of it as an opportunity when we remember that relationships are here to be fucking white knuckle ride in evolution, in personal truth, because nothing feels better than being my personal truth and being loved for it. So that's what 9-centered relating is being, expressing, acting as the energy in my meat suit, right on the edge of it, and still being loved, not have to tailor or color or cut back any of it.
So I want to ask this to Richard first. How has being in this relationship changed you as a person, as an individual?
That's a great question. And I'll back up a little.
It's not a sacral question, though, so maybe I need to find it changed you as a person?
Well, I think it's helped me to get a deeper sense of healing. It's been a healing journey. When we're following our human design path and we're getting to know ourselves, beautiful things happen, simple things happen, energetic levels, the frequency, everything feels more clear. We drop judgments. We offer more forgiveness. We have more self-love. There's so many benefits at a personal level from getting in touch with our body's consciousness. In a relationship, as we mentioned earlier, now we're going to be getting into patterns from our deep past, how we were loved at the very beginning or not loved enough at the very beginning. We all have some degree of needs that were not met, that became painful and often pushed away under the rug into our shadow self. And it's only in a relationship mainly that we get access to unresolved wounding patterns. As a result of this relationship and being with this magnificent beloved of mine, Brandy, and all of the healing she has brought into her own life and has been an example to the world as a role model of healing, I am with a partner where that is encouraged, that it's actually just part of the everyday reality, that where I am disturbed and dysregulated, there is something inside of me that I want to recognize now and not push away and not alter my behavior to fit the expectation, all the things we've been sharing here. So for me, it's been a very deeply healing expansion, I would say, as a result of this relationship. And that's been what I've noticed the most.
Hmm. What would you say, Brandy? How have you changed? How has it changed you? Hey, just popping in for a quick sec. I know we're deep in conversation, but if you're feeling called to dive deeper into your human design experiment, I'm here to guide you. Whether it's a personalized reading or one-on-one mentorship, let's explore the next steps towards radical self-trust together. Visit KathyBochonko.com to learn more. All right, back to the conversation. There's so much more to explore. How has it changed you?
Man, it has challenged all the inside parts of me. And all the while, I never fathomed this would be possible. All the while feeling like love. So it is this, it's this dare almost. It's like his energy almost is like a dare to love us more.
Well, I would add to part of what when you look at our two charts, right? The ego, splenic authority, manifester, emotional MG. The only similarity in our chart is our profile, and that's big. Being in a relationship with someone. But that's the end of the similarity. It's all electromagnetic, compromise, and dominance channels. Those are human design terms for composite charts. There's no.
You don't share any channels.
We don't share. There's no companionship channels. And all of our centers are opposite mostly, except for the G and the throat definition. All of our, we're 9 and 0, and we're just opposites.
Yeah. And
truly.
It's really rare to see 9 and 0 single definition in a relationship. So I do want to, that's on my notes of things I want to speak to, but keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So just to say that again, even just at the type level, like what we've unearthed through this evolving out loud is these differences and how we're learning to work with them. And all of them, each one of these things are big. Just the fact that she's a ego manifester and I'm the emotional generator. How does that work? How do we honor her space and creativity and ability to have room to initiate and have her queendom of what she's going to bring into this world? And I'm totally different. I'm sort of the mule, a collaborator, chirping like birds with other generators, asking questions back and forth. So, we're just such different energetic types, yet deeply in love. And so how do we manage the mechanics while we follow the love of our mythology?
And I think that is the intersection of mechanics and mythology is magic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where the coming together, the quantum, right? The coming together of a negative charge and a positive charge, no negative and positive meant, but just one thing and another, the coming together of two opposite things. We are learning as humans that we have the opportunity through our perception to create that thing, whatever that is coming together, that is being experienced, that is being told in a story. What story are we telling? Are we telling the story of our wounding that says you are bad and wrong because you did not meet my needs? Or are we telling the story of, oh my gosh, thank you. Like I got to this point where I am so afraid that my needs aren't going to be met because I'm relinquishing them to you. I'm going to go ahead and take those back now. Thank you for having this opportunity with me. And I wanted to share that with you. It's a totally different, but both is the opportunity. So I think that is what is so brilliant about the love that we share is there's such magic. We both get this we get off a little on transformation, right? It feels really good to be at the edge of ourselves that way and to overcome or to feel like we nurtured something into awakening. It feels really good. So it's an adventure that we are on in that way together too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I've found it's been a really new thing for me to get excited about getting triggered.
Yeah.
Like I'm feeling awful. I'm mad. I'm sad. Sometimes I'm just like, I had a major panic about something, totally overreacted to a fall where I got hurt. I wrote a blog about it this week with my transit stuff. And then when a few minutes passed and I realized where it all came from, I was like, I know that I'm triggered. This is wow, there's something here. I can learn something from this. I'm overreacting. Why am I doing this? And I did some tapping and I was like, oh, wow. Now there's a belief you can let go of, right? I was afraid. I was afraid I was getting old and my body was going to start to fail me. And I fell. And what if I had a fall? I'm starting to have people around me who are having issues. So this whole thing came up and I was able to. And so, but when that happens in relationship, and I think I talked about this, Richard, when we were on our talk, where my husband and I had a tit for tat kind of thing. And it really escalated quickly. And so much previous stuff was in my body when it was coming up. And it was stuff that I thought we had dealt with. And it was like, when we had this thing come up again, my body was like, oh my God, it's not gone. You thought you were done with this. This is still here. And my body flipped out inside, right? About it. Like, we haven't fixed this. You're staying in this situation with this still here. And I observed it from out of my body. And then I was like, whoa, look, he's having some similar I could see that he was having a similar kind of feeling. And I was able to just walk away and then be like, and ever since then, it's like it's gone. It's like, because I was, when you can name it and observe it, it's like it takes away all the power. It was like it was the last little bit in my body saying, oh no. And then me realizing that it really was not anything, right? I don't even know if that made sense, but when you can, and then I almost celebrate, like I'm telling people about this big fight, and people are like, you really want, yeah, because it was so cool to let it go then afterwards, right? I don't know how to really explain it, but it was transformative.
It's beautiful. And it may come back again. And you have the power to have a beautiful experience, right?
Things are secular, right? They come around back.
Always. And
same devil, new level.
How wonderful is it that we get to become more intimate and more intimate and more, because right now in these 2 years together, we have been building the foundation, in a phase 1, building the foundation, and we're still coming together. We're still getting to know the inner terrain of each other. Mm-hmm. And so then now we're getting to know the inner terrain. Then we're going to come back around and probably trigger the inner terrain. And then we're going to experiment with other ways to help heal and be with the inner terrain. And, it'll just keep coming back. So
for those who might be catching this, but not quite, I remember in your talk, you related the levels in relationships to the 6 lines. And so I feel like that's what you're alluding to here in what you said. So
exactly. The spiral of any growth is through those 6 lines of the hexagram, the spiral of the growth of anything, not just relationships, but our cells and the trees and the cosmos. Everything operates in that cyclical order. And so it's an opportunity each time to either say, oh, I up and I must not have done it right the first time because it's back again, and then start another loop. Or, okay, here we are again. What did I learn from the last time? How, and understanding now, using the mind to make sense of where we're following our bodies into. Because now, I assume when I'm saying that your body's strategy and authority, and you're following it, and you're meeting these scenarios that you're like, what in the hell is going on? Well, now here's another tool, is that spiral of everything, that understanding that you are going to meet the same thing. And what is being asked of you is line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5. Yeah. And so when I'm able to access that knowing, it's been a wonderful tool. And I'm a professional at this, and I cannot access that knowing all the time. Sometimes I put Post-its or write on mirrors so that I could be reminded of these things that are so easily forgotten. Yeah.
I'm waiting for Richard to respond to something. I guess I need to give him something.
What's alive in you, my dear?
Well, I guess what was one of them was it brings up another interesting topic in terms of following our authority into as Brandy has a wonderful phrase, to the places and spaces that it does, which our mind is never going to stop judging that. And so we often, following authority will take us into difficult situations. right? That are going to be uncomfortable, but it's happening for a reason. And as I was sharing in my story in this relationship, it's been for a deeper level of healing. Even though I'm on the cross of healing, my whole life has been a chironic journey of healing. There's still more in there for me to mine and work with and discover my hidden gems through following my authority into challenging situations that this relationship has also brought, in addition to the love and the fun and the aliveness we bring and the creative expression. Yeah, it's a relationship. There's going to be peaks and valleys, and our authorities brought us here, and we're getting to witness the magic that brings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, I know a lot of people who have entered new relationships at, middle age or beyond. And it's interesting to see the extreme differences in how some of them approach it. And I think it really comes down to, where they're coming from, like, that whole needing to really love yourself and not be willing to just lose yourself in the relationship. And so I think this is just really beautiful with the 6 lines, right? Not that it wouldn't be a wonderful story if you were 2 different profiles or whatever, but, to really look at this in the context of, the role model. And one of the things I think, if I'm remembering the quote, Richard, you said, if I lie, I die, right? And I'm wondering how that plays out in relationship. I mean, are there times where you feel like you're going to die because you can't lie?
Yeah, and that conversation was part of me talking about being a 6 line
Right.
about 4 years off the roof now. And one of the biggest physical experiences I've had in coming off the roof. Looking back at on the roof, there were options. I was able to sort of cut corners in my MG energy to move forward. Not being maliciously dishonest, but I call it cutting corners, not saying something just to keep the waters still, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Whereas now at this stage, I am incapable. It feels unhealthy. I mean, I'm on 46 line 6 sun position. That's called the line of integrity. The opposite of that is hypocrisy. And so as part of my chironic coming off the roof, it's about being completely honest with myself and the other at all times. And yes, that gets challenged in a relationship, right? Do I want to keep the peace or say what I'm really energized to share? And so managing that, improving our communication, which has been one of the tenets of the work we're doing together, is to continually find ways to support each other through effective communication. Clear, concise, honest, vulnerable at all times, even during dysregulation, finding a way to communicate, because anything that's not getting shared is getting pushed down somewhere that will come back later. So these are all the things we've been working through during our time.
Yeah.
Or even come back as disease, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It has shown up. I mean, I have, again, a splenic authority, and I feel like it's gonna let me know when, and it always does. And there always has been. I've been a completely different human on the cusp of, I'm in my last 7 years before I come off the roof. And it's like I have learned all of these tools, and this 6 line journey of moving from a hypocrite to the role model, I think is a very natural progression, because I know all this stuff, but I can't freaking be it all of the time. So I'm in this finding myself in these hypocritical moments where I don't practice what I preach, but I recognize it. And then I say, okay, what would happen if I did practice what I preached? What is it about that I'm afraid of? And then answering my own fears. Gosh, my point in saying that was good, and I've lost it. But I think that, I don't know what that was about.
Well, I don't. Maybe it'll come to you. But we were on the 6 line theme, us being 6 lines, and that's why we've been saying that we're visible. 6 lines, right. People are seeing us. Are we a trusted advisor, role model, or not? And so we've been saying, we're evolving out loud. We're sharing our relationship. We're sharing the ups and the downs and all the beauty and the tribulations that go in being in this type of relationship.
Yeah.
And that's been a real strong connection. Even though it's Brandy sharing, she's still on the roof. I'm off the roof, but there's a real bond there in this 6 line journey, which is so connected to the planet Chiron, where we were talking about earlier. I mean, the tripartite life is based on the Chiron return. And so I find to be a real strong association. Chiron for everyone. I love the archetype of Chiron for all people,
Heroes,
but for 6 lines, it's just so built into the process and the tripartite life itself. And so we've been able to explore that from our personal standpoints as well as in relationship together.
Yeah. And it just really feels like a coming home. It really feels like our design is living itself, and we are watching it and talking about it, watching it and talking about it, learning from it, watching it, talking about it, doing the dance of being human and enjoying the ride, not taking it so seriously, but knowing that there's something being done here through us. And having the pride and responsibility to also see that through, even when it's hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We also share 4 channels that are electromagnetic in individual circuitry. And so there's a mutation between us.
Yeah.
And again, that's an interesting fiery mutation, and it could be scary and exciting all in the same moment. Amazing things come from it. But then when you add in the challenge of individuality, which is the melancholy and the not knowing and the lack of empowerment, it's all there. And so it gets real mucky and gushy and scary and dark. And then it emerges as something new, something gets birthed.
If he's not a 35, 36.
Husband and I have 11 electromagnetic channels.
11.
Yes, we have 11 electromagnetics, including the channel of struggle, and we've got the 2551. We've got we've
got that one.
Yeah,
The same way.
Yeah.
we've got the 4629. And he's got the commitment, so that's it. I've got the embodiment, the 46, but so yeah, I understand how those electromagnetics work, and we definitely have the sparks that, 32 years of them now, but we've had a lot of burns, right? So yeah, and it's definitely been really powerful to go through the human design experiment in relationship, and I came home from an immersion when I was about, it was about halfway through. I was maybe almost 4 years in, but I was still just really in my head up until that point. I was learning about it. I wasn't really living it. And when I came home from this immersion and I was trying to explain to him about needing to be recognized and invited, right? And this whole thing. And I was and he was just so he's like, I feel like you're trying to say something, just say it. And he thought I was trying to tell him I wanted a divorce. And several times when I would try to talk to him, he's like, are you saying you want a divorce? Everything is wait. But he has a completely open solar plexus, not one hanging gate, right? So yeah, it's always been interesting for me to find my voice, to separate his defined ajna from my completely open ajna, right? And to realize what's me, and to navigate my energy with my undefined sacral that has both of my sun gates on it and my 3 hanging gate 59s, including my design Venus, which, all of our generational karma is in that one, according to I'm going to Chaitan's workshop on that again, and that'll be fun. But yeah, so it's a lot. And so what I'm wondering now, after I babbled again, my questions are always these long drawn out things, but first this processing, then I'll get you a question out of there. But I'm wondering what sort of tangible things you think are the best things for people when they're looking at their human design chart. Because a lot of the things, when you just look at a relationship connection chart, right? And you start reading, oh no, we're 6 and 3, better to be free. Or you read these things and they just sound, like whatever.
We cringe. We call that cringeworthy, that stuff.
I know, right? So when you read this stuff, or you see that you've got, all your variables are faced the opposite ways, or these things, and it can all be like, oh, we're doomed. And people say, oh yeah, they're good for you. They're not. And I think that's all garbage, but I'm wondering what kind of tangible things you like to teach people. I mean, obviously you can't teach all of it right now.
I'm going through the database here. I think I have something, but I think you might too.
First, I just want to acknowledge, I appreciate bringing that forward.
Right.
People that may be listening recognize there's so much on the internet that is disempowering. It is not quantifiably true. No one's proven this. It's just a lot of garbage. And when people use their human design charts to justify maladaptive behaviors and blame things on other people, we're not talking human design anymore. These are charts of our magnificence, our potential, yes, our vulnerabilities, but it's not to be used to judge, blame, say that a relationship shouldn't or couldn't work out. Anytime I'm seeing or hearing that stuff, I walk away. So we don't subscribe to any of that jargon, if you will.
Yeah.
But back to tips. Where can we look? We can start at the very beginning. As I mentioned, just type, right? What is the type? I'm a emotional MG, right? Splenic Manifester. There's a lot to chew on just from type.
Yep.
Haven't even gotten into the centers, haven't even gotten to channels, just type. We could talk on that for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Easily. Then, go ahead.
No, you weren't finished.
Continuing with authority. She's splenic in the moment. Everything is so lightning fast, my head can spin. I am way solar plexus. I need every day and another day. You know, like our flow, our personal energy is very, very different. So the respect and appreciation, the communication to honor that. So we're checking in daily, you know, is there enough space for her creative manifestation, art to come alive? Do I have enough freedom to move energy every day? These are very fundamental, again, not even getting into the channels. There is so much to work with just with type and authority. We could spend weeks with clients just on that. That would be very beneficial before we even dive into gates and channels, which is where most people go, because you look at the program and right away you're reading dominance, compromise. What do these mean? We have to be very delicate, I think, when we're in that realm. We have to be really solid on our personal connection to our authority, having lived and deconditioned before we can even get to that piece of the puzzle, right?
Right. And the tool or tip at the very beginning that we start with is kind of not even to look at the human design charts. There's no blame. There's no putting it together and seeing what's what. That's not how you see this. That's not the way this works. It is talking about your design and how you honor yourself, because it's back to that strongest metronome in the room. Because when you start loving yourself, your beloveds will start loving themselves. That compassionate view, that taking that stance of seeing what love sees, that's where to start, because the mythology will unfold no matter if you're 6 and 3, it's better to be free, or 9 and 0, nowhere to go. There are pros and cons in all of these things. And that is not even the point of it. The point of it is, how do you love yourself in a regulated, true, authentic, sovereign way while still also loving the other? And so the first tool is always, it's about me. You know, if I'm pointing my finger at you, there's 3 fingers pointing back at me. So where's what am I judging? I love Byron Katie's Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. Mm-hmm. It was one of my very favorites that got me to see this compassionate viewing, this bigger sight, is that every time I have 1 finger pointed out, there are 3. And so when I can sit with those 3 that I feel, why do I feel the need to make you wrong or different? It's because usually I'm afraid. It's because I haven't been authentic. And it's because I'm afraid to ask for what I need. So almost always in teaching and sitting with people, those are the first tenets of anything, is getting past the blocks to do those things, because we're not even going to hear our authority in our body to be able to follow it if we can't allow those things to exist in their dimensional reality around us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's not about jingles. It's not even about the design. The design is just the raft. It's just the thing that points to the thing that we all are just not talking about. So it's creating the bandwidth to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll mention for your listeners another book that was informative for us, that's sort of at the core of our work and teaching as well. And it was called Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrick. A really famous book some years ago, but still very relevant today. And in there, they explain from their psychological background that they sort of prove scientifically that, yeah, our bodies, our attraction, our love we feel for others is based on the needs we didn't get as children. And so it explains it from a very biological standpoint so that we can know going into a relationship, eyes wide open, after the newness wears off, the realness is going to come out, and there's going to be things that are challenging. And as you were sharing, to maybe not get excited about being triggered, but recognize that it's a natural part of a relationship.
Yeah.
And not to get angry or blame or shame, but to say, oh, okay, we've really hit something here.
Yeah.
Let's explore this. Let's mine this. Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Why do I feel threatened, defensive, undefined ego for myself, I may say, with K21 dormant or hanging? It's like, yeah, my natural reaction is to take control and defend myself. Well, there you go. There's a lot to work on there.
Yeah. And making things like easy things like pass the butter is something that, I'm feeling upset. Pass the butter. It's not something bad or wrong. It's I'm upset. And do I choose to be right now? When I let I'm upset exists, and he also lets I'm upset exist, then I'm upset gets to run its course and go away. But if there's defense and this whole everything, a cage built around I'm upset, then now that elongates itself. So we've got to learn a language of being able to allow the spectrum of feelings. Open solar plexus.
Yeah. And again, back to the type, for manifestors, it's peace or anger.
Yeah.
Well, in my household growing up, anger was scary. Anger was not okay. But we're learning, and Brandy's been teaching me, that for a manifestor, it's part of the sign. It's like me being frustrated. It's not the end of the world. It's just a signpost. I'm frustrated. Let me regroup. Let me reground in my life force energy so that I can feel connected and connect and grow and move forward again. Anger is her sign, right? So it's nothing for me to be afraid of, although it can feel a little scary sometimes. I'm learning to be comfortable with she's going through her experience so that she can navigate her own energy in her way. So we're finding space for these things. And the human design, as we're sharing with you, is such a fantastic tool, right? It's a beautiful tool, but I'm always hurt deeply when I see people using it to promulgate a problem.
To make choices based on what they see on that graph.
Yeah.
And that is just the opposite.
When I look at a chart going on almost 30 years now, I don't assume anything. I know the names of the gate. I have a lot of experience with thousands of clients.
Right.
But when I'm speaking to a new person, I don't assume anything. I ask questions, right? Because when we assume something, we're getting into the weeds that are not going to help that client. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I remember years ago sharing my connection chart in some Facebook group. I forget which one, and I don't even remember what I was asking. I shared the connection chart of myself and my husband, and someone just out of the blue, not related to anything we're talking about, or that I was asking about, said, I'm really curious how that works for you when, because my husband's perspective is survival and mine is wants, needs. Right? And they're like, you guys are in transference. So the way you see the world is pulling each other into transference. And that has but they said it in some way that was very much like, I just don't see how you can live with a person who's constantly pulling you into transference and and that whole thing. And then my mind starts going, oh, and he's a fifth line. So of course I project everything on him, right? But yeah, people can plant these seeds in your mind, and then your mind can let them grow. And that was part of what I really had that experience I just wrote about with my fall, where I really realized how not only did I have that panic, I actually later, when I retold the story, had the pain come back that had been gone all day. And I realized in that moment, it was really powerful. I'm very minimizing the story here, but I literally could hardly walk, and I was afraid later in the day. And I was fine. I was like, oh my God, I retore this tendon. And I realized my mind had created this scenario of fear, and my body was responding to it. And so where there were small weaknesses in my body was responding with pain, because it was, okay, we're not strong. We're not healthy, right? And so I think that can happen in our relationships if we're focusing on, oh, it's always going to be a problem because I'm a triple split and he bridges all my splits. And so we're in the house together a lot of times, and we only have 2 cars for 3 people. And so I can't always leave and get out of here. And and I can create all these scenarios in my mind about how actually knowing that has made me stop from going, oh, he's controlling me. Cause I'm like, no, it's just I just need to go walk somewhere where there's some people. But yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. And so you're sharing a very real example that unfortunately we see in social media every day, where people are using the human design to disempower another person. And it's unfortunate, but with the internet, everything's out there. So it's always an encouragement to always be mindful of how we're feeling as we're taking in new information.
Yeah.
Is this causing fear, or is this empowering me? The core of the human design body graph is individuality, which is about empowerment. And I think that says a lot about human design. It's there for that. And if it's being used for disempowerment.
I was going to say something almost exactly the same, is that the universe, spirit, source, whatever you want to call that, speaks in humor. It doesn't speak in you should or you shouldn't, or you did this wrong, or there's another better way, or let's try it again. You've reached truth when you get to laugh about it. And that's where human design brings us. Mm-hmm. It brings us a tool to help us laugh about it. It's to help us to arrive at that moment to see what Ra called our helplessness. But he said it in such a pointed way. But really to be like, oh my gosh, this was designed for us. And we just did all of this. We played our role so perfectly. Did you see that? I saw that. And then boom, everything is alchemized back into love, which is all that exists.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So what is there any last words for great words of relationship wisdom you want to share with our guests before we wind up? And I do want to just also make sure you talk a little bit about your book, because I think that might be a good way to wrap up as well. But
thank you. I guess the little piece of something I've been working on, so I can only give you what I've been in the journey of. And this most recent one that I've gathered is just, if I can't open my heart at all, I try to find a tender spot, a tender 10%. Like, where is your tenderness? And that has been helping me in this relationship, because we tend to close down. I tend to close down, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that tends to know that I have this sovereign place of love inside, but the distance between that and my anger feels unreachable. And so instead of feeling bad that I couldn't get to see what love sees, I just found a tender spot and went in a little 10%, just a little 10% softer. That's it. So just see where you could just be a little softer in those hard edges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I've been working through.
And I guess I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just said beautiful. Go ahead, Richard.
Well, I think, again, relating it back to the human design body graph as a tool in relationships is to, if someone's studying the human design and they're learning about their chart and they're learning about their partner, to see that magnificence in their partner's chart and to, as Brandy said, hold that mirror up for them. And it's so empowering for the other person, because when we're in a state of despair or dysregulation, we're not seeing that in ourselves. And to be able to say, remember, this is you. That's a really touching gift of love.
It is. And it's alchemized a lot when he brings my natal chart to the table and he says, well, in his sweet way that he's learned to do over trial and error, telling me what is happening with my chart, because I don't look at it all the time.
Well, in the transits, and I've been reading your transit emails. They're awesome. Yeah. And I love that this is sort of becoming alive in the human design community, because it's really brings so much awareness to that. And so that's part of what Brandy's referring to.
And we are rewriting our book. But it is still on Amazon, and you did share the title, The Art of Nine-Centered Relating. it is being revised, and we have been picked up by a beautiful publisher. And so we are in the midst of recreating it with more anecdotes and funny stories. And in the meantime, we are beginning an unfold journey later this summer, which is going to take people through the embodiment journey of the planets in their design, basically showing their mythology, showing how they were designed to close their hearts, showing the geometry of how they're designed to reopen their hearts. What are they here to mature, and where does their discipline live, and how does that come up against the people that they love, and how do they use their language to teach people how to love them instead of defend themselves with armor. So we're starting, there'll be a waiting list on our website for that program. It's called Unfold, and it's the second journey in our year-long program called Vulnerable.
Beautiful. So, okay, well, I really appreciate you guys sharing your personal stories and stuff with us in this journey. It's been my pleasure to speak with you both again about this. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love spending time with you, and I hope I get to see you again, at least in September, right?
Hopefully at both conferences.
Yeah, we'll see you at the conferences. And we want to thank you for what you do as well. Having this beautiful podcast, bringing human design stories to life in real lifetime. It's fascinating. Yeah. I always think back to my early years when really there wasn't a few hundred people on the globe had heard of it. And it was such a lonely journey back then, not being able to have space online where you can talk and share and learn and support each other. So thank you for the efforts you put into this program.
Yes.
And we really appreciate being on it.
Well, you're welcome. And I do want to say, when you were talking about before about the problems with so many things on social media being inaccurate, like that's the flip side, right? There's always a good with the bad. So we have the good of now it's so much easier. Even just when I started, 8 years ago, it was really a search to find information, and you had to get books, and you had to search for those books. And now there's a lot of information available. You have to be more discerning about, is it the right information, right? So, but it's all perfect. That's what I always say, especially in this Gate 18 energy. It's all perfect. So I want to say peace out, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of Real Human Design Stories. I hope these stories help you see how human design can reframe not only your own story, but also the stories you tell yourself about your relationships. If you're ready to tell a more empowered story about who you came here to be, I invite you to explore ways to work with me directly at kathybochonko.com. Supporting this podcast is easy. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating, like, comment, and share with your friends. This helps the podcast grow the most. You can also become a contributing sponsor for as little as 99 cents a month. Details are available at realhumandesignstories.com. Thanks again for being here. Real Human Design Stories is created and hosted by me, Kathy Bochonko, and produced by Number 3 Productions. Peace out, everybody.